Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're exploring a really powerful idea from a pastor's sermon. It asks a pretty tough question. What happens when the very heart of family life stops being about connection and starts being about a screen? We're going to look at the call to bring worship back into the home and break down what that even looks like in our world today. So, the pastor kicks things off with a personal story that I bet sounds pretty familiar to a lot of us. He talks about this central family tradition, a time for connection, for faith, that just got pushed aside by this powerful new distraction. And that simple switch from family connection to screen time, that's really the core challenge we're digging into.
You know, this isn't just about feeling nostalgic for the good old days. The sermon points to a very real problem that tons of families are dealing with right now. That slow, quiet fading of intentional, meaningful time together, all because we're surrounded by constant digital noise. And this just lays it all out, doesn't it? Before the TV, families were actually creating their own evening. They were talking, sharing, doing things together. But afterwards, they became passive consumers of whatever was on. This wasn't just a small change in the schedule. It completely changed the whole vibe of the home.
Okay, so what exactly was this practice that got lost in the shuffle? Let's get into the central idea that the sermon calls the family altar. What is it? So the sermon makes it clear this is way more than just, saying grace before dinner. It's about setting aside a dedicated moment for the family to connect with God. Not in a big church building, but as the pastor says, in mi casa, en mi hogar. Right there, in my house, in my home. It's this intentional space for reflection that you literally carve out of your everyday life.
And the great thing is, this wasn't some stuffy, hour-long ceremony. The real beauty of the family altar was its simplicity. It was built on these core activities: reading a quick passage, saying a prayer together, maybe even just singing a song. The point wasn't how long it took. It was the simple, consistent act of just coming together. That's it.
And let me be clear, this is not presented as just a nice, little, optional activity. The message is crystal clear. Having this shared spiritual time is a foundational piece of the puzzle. It's described as absolutely vital for a family's health and its unity.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds like a kind of quaint, old-fashioned idea, right? But the sermon makes this incredible case that this is, it's anything but new. In fact, it's presented as this fundamental practice that goes back thousands of years.
This timeline just paints such a powerful picture. The sermon argues that from the very beginning, faith was taught at home. It wasn't something you outsourced. You see Noah leading his family after the flood, Abraham building altars no matter where he traveled. And the source points to Joseph. His incredible integrity in Egypt, it says, came from a faith that was so deeply programmed at home that, and I love this phrase from the pastor, it was on his hard drive. This was the way values were passed down generation to generation.
So if this practice is so incredibly important, whose job is it to make it happen? Well, on this point, the sermon leaves zero room for doubt.
The pastor makes a really direct appeal here. He argues that parents just can't delegate this fundamental duty. Now, things like Sunday school are great. They're valuable supplements, for sure. But the core responsibility for a child's spiritual growth, according to this message, lands squarely on the parents, right there in the home. And the timing here is absolutely critical. The sermon zooms in on those first 5 years of life as the most formative time of all. During this period, kids are like little sponges. They learn so much more by just watching what their parents do than by anything they're told to believe. It's all about imitation. So this breaks that huge responsibility down into clear, manageable steps. Right. It starts with teaching the principles of your faith, but it doesn't stop there. You have to actually model it, live it out. Then you correct mistakes with love, not anger. And ultimately, you embrace that you are their number one spiritual guide.
And this quote, this really takes the whole idea to another level. It stops being about just a quiet little family activity. The sermon frames it as this profound mission that parents are actively shaping the next generation, preparing them to be a positive force, a light in the world. Okay, so we've got the problem, we've got the solution, and we know who's responsible. The final part of the message turns to a sense of urgency. Why is this something you have to start right now?
The sermon gives this really passionate warning against falling into that trap of procrastination. It's so easy to say, we'll start when things calm down, or we'll do it when the kids are a little older. But the message here is blunt. That window of opportunity to build this foundation, it's finite. It's precious. If you keep putting it off, you might just miss it completely.
And that leads to this timeless and honestly pretty sobering principle. You reap what you sow. The time, the faith, the connection you invest in your children today directly shapes the relationship you're going to have with them tomorrow. If you sow connection, you'll reap honor. But the warning is there too. If you sow neglect, you risk reaping that same distance down the road.
And this really brings us to the final, big, thought-provoking question from this whole explainer. When it's all said and done, what are the memories that are going to stick with your kids?
Ultimately, the sermon challenges us to think about the lasting images we're creating in our children's minds. The final plea isn't about being a perfect parent. It's about being a present one. It's an invitation to build a legacy where your kids remember not just the rules, not just the distractions, but those quiet, powerful moments of reverence and connection that were built right there in the heart of your home.